So in the news again is the speaker race, and it's been about 3 weeks since there's been a speaker. They're still trying to determine who the speaker will be, and Vern Buchanan has been at the center of this. And I want to play this clip that he shows and shares. This was about 2 months ago. His desire and the way he sees the problem of out of control spending. So let's go ahead and play this.
To step up and do that. And I have a senior committee, senior community. I'm willing to be out front on it in terms with others, but we've got to do it together. One side or the other is not going to do it, but they've got to get the political courage to work together and get it done. There are some that would like to do it, but this is all about politics, and we got these harsh realities that we've got to deal with.
Now, in this clip, he's talking about the political courage that's necessary to work with the Democrats. And so while his constituents and the rest of the country wanted Jim Jordan and wanted a conservative who would actually change the trajectory of the government in our lives and the out of control spending and move away from continuing resolution to omnibus bill, which eliminates any kind of accountability, and it gives our politicians the ability to throw their hands up and come back to their constituents and say, well, shoot, I've done my darndest to try to control the spending, but it's real tough up there. We actually have a chance now if we bring in a speaker who will bring up single item issues and prevent us from an omnibus bill. We could actually balance the budget. But what he's talking about is in order to do this, that we need to work with the Democrats. This doesn't make any sense. And he showed it by, in the middle of the battle and the race for a speaker, he goes, and as many of you have seen, he goes and is bowling at the invitation of the president, of the Bidens. He is bowling with the Democrats and dancing and partying. And many of you guys have seen that clip. If not, we'll show you an example of that clip also of him dancing with Democrats and bowling with the Bidens. And Vern can have his friends, which are Democrats, and the constituents and we the people of Florida's 16th district, I'll be friends with them and be close to them and find out what their needs are and hang out with them. So this coalition government, Vern has been one of 6 rhinos who have been leading the charge from the Republican Party to fight against accountability. And the rhinos are working with their uniparty counterparts from the Democrat Party and are already plotting to create a coalition government. There's another clip that he describes what he foresees happening, that Jim Jordan won't get the votes and these other people won't get the votes, so that he can begin this coalition government to begin working with Democrats. It remains to be seen whether this will work out or not, but it's clear that this is what he's driving towards. And now, yesterday, we have, per CNN, let's go ahead and bring up this clip from MSN.com, and GOP Representative Vern Buchanan is quoted and noted that if the speaker designee can't get to 217 votes, Republicans would be forced to work with Democrats to get the government open. So you see how he's leading in this area of all the rhino Republicans, the Republicans in name only, who talk about balancing the budget, but who aren't balancing the budget and are avoiding accountability, that he's the one who is signaling the next steps. He signaled the next steps in his interview earlier this week, and with MSN and CNN, he's signaling again to work with Democrats. Now, we know that working with Democrats isn't going to bring accountability to the bureaucracy in Washington, D.C. This is a bad strategy, and it is not political courage. It's political courage to defy the will of the people. So I'll give him that. It is courageous to defy the will of the people, but it's time that we the people stand up and somebody steps into the gap, and that somebody would be me, to have the political courage to do the will of the people. And the will of the people is certainly accountability, single item issues and bills to vote on, so that we can actually balance the budget and not just talk about balancing the budget while sending out inane polls to his constituents that make people feel like he's listening to them when he's not. He's playing them, he's playing us, and he's defying the will of the people.
I've known Eddie Spear for about 10 years. We met professionally when I came to teach at the school Claire and Eddie founded, and we soon became good friends. Our families are very close. So much so that Eddie asked my little brother if he could stand in for him whenever I needed teased or annoyed, and he's very good at that job. One of the things I love about working with Eddie is that we crack each other up. One of the first things I found out about Eddie is how much he cares about people. I have watched many times as Eddie has sacrificed his time and his money for students and families. Personally, Eddie and Claire have been there for me when I've gone through trials and victories, even as they were walking through their own tough times. Every trial has strengthened Eddie's faith in God and solidified his role as a courageous leader. I am honored to have him as a friend.
I'm excited to have Richard Tatem on today for this would be the fourth Eddie-torial podcast and the spotlight section. And Richard Tatem is a school board member of District 5 in Manatee County. So it's great to have you on. I want to just say that I was incredibly impressed with you at Tiger Bay and the debate. Your cool, calm, professorial demeanor and laying out the issues was great, and I really appreciate you being on the show today. So thank you very much. I'd love for you to start by just kind of giving us a description of that debate, what it was about, and let's go from there.
Okay, sure. So there was a debate, and it was good. It was set up by an organization called Tiger Bay here in Manatee County, Florida. And the issue of the day was CRT, critical race theory, in our public school system. I'd like to start out by saying that, and I said this at the debate, that I don't believe in the Manatee County school system that it is a big problem. And I've seen a little bit of anecdotal evidence, but I think in general our teachers I know they're good teachers. They're not indoctrinating our children, and that from the staff all the way even to the school board, we are very vigilant against that. And I just don't see it being a big problem in Manatee County. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't be on guard, and that's one of the reasons that I ran for the school board, is to make sure that that stuff stays out. Now, one thing that almost got into the school system in Manatee County is what we call diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives, and I call that the poison spawn of critical race theory. If you go back and look at Darwinism, for instance, and you look at that idea that that there's no creator God, and that it's basically a survival of the fittest, so to speak, and then you look at eugenics down the road and the horrors that caused. And it was actually a very well-respected academic subject area in the early 20th century. There were hundreds of universities. Some of the best universities in America had eugenics courses. You can make a direct tie between Darwin's theory of evolution and eugenics, and then some of the atrocities that were committed by the Nazis. And so when you look at diversity, equity, and inclusion, and actually I'll take this quote from what's called the organization called Blexit, Blacks Exiting the Left. They wrote a pamphlet on critical race theory, and they said diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are critical race theory in action. Because what they're trying to do is take those ideas from critical race theory. Basically, there's a power structure. All critical theories are based on the idea of oppressor and oppressed people.
Yeah.
When you take critical race theory, you're saying, well, it's basically racial oppression. There's a racially oppressive group of people, and then there's a racially oppressed group of people. And then when you go out into these, so you take that theory, and then you have to figure out, well, how am I going to operationalize it? Just like any theory, even leadership theories. If you write a book on a leadership theory, you eventually have to, if you want it to become prominent, you write books, you give seminars, you go out and do workshops. And so the diversity, equity, and inclusion industry is the way that they take that idea of critical race theory that we just talked about. And it was originally a legal theory. It primarily applied to, how many people are in prison. Is there a systemic racism problem in the American legal system? But as that blossomed and grew out, that oppressor model with race grew out into this DEI kind of program.
Yeah.
So,
which is basically just a new slant on Marxism.
mm-hmm.
That and I tell a lot of people that because in America there is a crossing of between poor and rich very quickly. It's not necessarily a caste system. That the same kind of tools of Marxism of class warfare don't work. So now let's have racial warfare. But the goal is the same in the end.
That's right.
Of there's oppressor and the oppressed.
Mhm.
Find a grievance and politicize that grievance for power.
Right.
And then the DEI side of things, obviously, with my experience at New College of Florida, I feel like I want to say something because you're so awesome at talking about DEI
Right.
and CRT, but we battled the same thing at the collegiate level and in universities, and I'm happy to say we're the first university to abolish DEI. But we shouldn't even have to abolish DEI. It should have never been there in the
Right.
first place. And so kudos to you and in Manatee County for not even allowing it to take hold.
Right.
That administrative function of CRT to drive home this oppressed versus oppressor type of a model. Let me ask you a hypothetical.
Sure.
If there weren't gatekeepers and people guarding Manatee County, what do you think would happen here in Manatee County if there weren't good board members? Just kind of paint a bleak picture or a realistic picture. I'm just curious your thoughts. If you weren't there, what would have happened?
So
you and others.
me and others, right? I and others, to use correct grammar here.
That's right.
I and others, subject.
Yeah.
Anyway, so in the spring of 2022, the previous gentleman who held my seat
Yeah.
was a primary driver in trying to get diversity, equity, and inclusion programs to become the basis for curriculum as well as professional development within the Manatee County school system. And it was hidden, and I use that word very carefully, it was hidden inside what was called an African American History Task Force, which at face value sounds okay. Let's talk more about Frederick Douglass. Let's talk more about Booker T. Washington. Let's talk some more about the Underground Railroad, and even John Aristide, who was an aide to Lafayette during the Revolutionary War, and someone who some people credit because he was double spying for the Americans and the British, although he was really on the American side, and was instrumental in providing some intelligence to the American and French forces at Yorktown that helped them win that battle. Let's talk about that. But that was not what this African American History Task Force was going to be about. It was, if you go back and read the draft of it, it had the words diversity, equity, and inclusion over 24 times in there. It used terms like decolonizing the curriculum, culturally responsive education. These are all buzzwords in the CRT world. And so luckily I was a candidate at the time for the school board. I was not yet elected. I and some other concerned citizens brought these concerns up to some of the school board members. And luckily we were able to remove all of that from the eventual draft plan that was put in place for the African American History Task Force. So that kind of stuff, there are people out there that want to weed it into the the American education system, and they're doing it in other places around the country, but I feel confident that it is not the way we do business here in Manatee County.
And it's important to understand how close that was
That's right.
to being indoctrinated into the students here in Manatee
That's right.
County. It is hidden because if they said what their aims are, what their goals are, then it would immediately be rejected. But they mask these things with very nice sounding words. It's Orwellian doublespeak. It's the Inflation Reduction Act, which does no such thing.
Right.
But let's just take one of those words, decolonization. You have words like DEI, and we're understanding what DEI means a little bit more, and the meaning behind that, the code behind that, or what that means. But just the word decolonization. Can you explain what that might mean and how that plays out in a larger sense in a student's mind?
Sure. So I actually have this theory I call the ABCs of being just an American, and it'll tie in here, so give me just a second. So
Sure.
from A to J, A and B, we think America is beautiful. C, we have a capitalist free market economy. D, we have a democratic constitutional representative republic. E, we have a common language, that's English. F is a right to bear firearms. G, H, and I as a Greco-Roman intellectual heritage, and J is a Judeo-Christian value system. That's the moral system, the economic system, the political system, kind of the social system with a common language and a little bit of patriotism thrown in. So decolonizing the curriculum basically means, a lot of that, what I mentioned, came from England. They colonized North America.
Yeah.
And so the idea now is to decolonize it. Capitalist free market economy espoused by, I think it's Scotsman, but eventually Englishman, Adam Smith.
Adam Smith, yeah.
All the ideas of Locke and even Montesquieu from France. It's still Western Europeans came with their political ideas, their economic ideas, their Judeo-Christian value system, and colonized North America. And so it's not that, America is a great place and that it's provided freedom and liberty and prosperity over coming up on 2.5 centuries now. It's that they came with an oppressive culture, and we now have it's kind of the neo-Marxist thing we were talking about before. It actually is the neo-Marxist thing. And so now we have to decolonize that.
Yeah.
We have to get rid of that economic system, that capitalist economic system, this oppressive Judeo-Christian value system, this the right to bear firearms, all that. Gotta go.
And it's all systemic racism is in everything, so therefore everything must be torn down. It's a doctrine of destruction at its core. And so when you start, I know I'm asking the question, but I'm jumping in with
That's okay. Sure.
some of the answers here. It's that destructive doctrine of planting in a student's mind that the system is racist, the system is wrong, the system must be torn down.
Right.
So the purpose of education is to foster and prepare students to be a part of this great country that
That's
is,
right.
and we don't, although I have to say, God bless the United States of America, the place of freedom, that shining light on a hill that has prospered so many people across the entire world and brought freedom. Now that must be destroyed according to this doctrine, just with a simple word by saying decolonization. That's kind of the dog whistle that is being injected under the guise, under the Orwellian doublespeak of African American history, which is a good thing.
That's right.
But then when you hide all these things underneath it through DEI initiatives, it becomes incredibly dangerous. And at a college level, it was the administrative Gestapo, the police, of judging who's the oppressor and who's the oppressed. And so now you're no longer a rule of law. You're a rule of the mob authority of this new paradigm of oppressor versus oppressed that actually supersedes law and is overarching over the entire university.
Right.
It's dangerous stuff. Let me ask you about your thoughts on HB1, because that's changed things here in Florida quite a bit. What are your thoughts? What do you see so far with HB1 and HB1 being school vouchers that's happened now in the free state of Florida?
Sure.
Freedom has been brought to the educational system to give parents choice. First of all, what I found is that a lot of parents don't fully understand that it's even there, that they have these options, that they have this opportunity. But regardless, you're with a public school and you see a lot of things happening there. Tell me what you see so far with HB1.
Sure. So I'll start off by saying that I think the Manatee County school system is a really good school system. And if I didn't think it was a really good school system, I wouldn't say that. I mean, I've been interacting now with the senior leaders and the teachers, and there are a lot of great patriots and a lot of great Americans out there. We have a lot of really great arts programs and band programs and STEM programs that are out there. So I think in general, the Manatee County school system is a good school system. However, being a free market kind of guy, so to speak, I'm not in favor of monopolies. And I've seen with my own eyes and talking to parents that the public school system for some children just isn't the place that they're going to thrive the best in. And so what HB1 I think does is it gives that opportunity to parents to say, I kind of like that classical charter school or that classical private academy down that they have in Sarasota. I really like the Hillsdale curriculum. I'd like my child to be exposed to those values when they're going to school, so I'm going to take my child there.
Wait. We gotta recognize where we are right now. Not the Hillsdale. It's Inspiration Academy.
Yeah.
What about that great school, Inspiration
Well,
Academy?
I was getting there. And by the way, I don't know for sure that the Sarasota Classical Academy uses a Hillsdale curriculum. I'm
Yeah.
theorizing, but it's some type of curriculum that is based on what you might call the great books of the Western world. Okay.
Yeah.
I know that there is an application to put forward the Bradenton Classical Academy,
Yeah.
which will be based on the 1776 curriculum from Hillsdale. And then we have schools like yours where if parents say, I'd really like to have a strong faith component in my school, and where we are in American society, for better or for worse, we've decided to not have active religion within our school system. They have an opportunity here, as well as a great, from what I've learned today, athletic opportunity. So, we talked about this quote earlier on the field from General MacArthur.
Yeah.
There's a sign as you go onto the fields at West Point, the athletic fields, and it says, "On the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds which on other fields and on other days will bear the fruits of victory." So you're here, you're giving these children a great academic education. Booker T. Washington said this, founder of the Tuskegee Institute: train the head, train the hands, train the heart. So the education, critical thinking, math skills, train the head, reasoning, train the hands, you're doing sports and things like that.
Yeah.
Train the heart, give them that spiritual, moral training. So to me,
Yeah.
it seems like and it's an opportunity for parents that want a spiritual component to their education. This school and other ones like it exist.
Yeah. Yeah. We're supposed to not like each other in a private school, and then I'm not even going to say public, government school.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, let's give parents choices.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, we shouldn't inject government demands that students be educated one way or another. This is sacred ground between a parent and their child, and parents' rights is important to uphold.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if they want to go to government schools, and there's a lot of good ones here in Manatee County, and I agree. And there's a lot of good charter schools, and there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of good. We're not the only private school.
That's right.
Bradenton Christian School, fantastic school.
Right.
But I love how you said that. On the fields of friendly, I had to write it down. Because I want to remember this one. On the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds, which on other fields, on other days, will bear the fruits of victory. The idea of competition isn't a negative idea.
Right.
It's accountability. It's closer accountability. On the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds, which on other fields and on other days will bear the fruits of victory. Did I get it right?
You're right. Yeah,
All
that's
right.
good.
All right. I'm going to practice that one. So that idea of competition, and from an athletic standpoint, you understand
Mm-hmm.
that if we compete more and more with each other, we're going to be better when the real fight happens. We're going to be better prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And so the same thing happens with schools.
Mm-hmm.
That I'll find out real quick if some other school is doing it better, and then I'll get better myself. Let's
Right.
share and grow, and let the parents be the ones that are holding us, schools,
Exactly.
accountable. That accountability is not a bad thing.
Yeah. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've talked to, I do what's called some deliveries where it's called feeding empty little tummies. And you take some bags of food to schools where apparently children need some extra nutrition over the weekend. Anyway, I went to a charter school and made a delivery. And I was walking out and I asked a parent, "How do you like the school?" "Oh, I love the school. It's great. They have kind of a fluid learning environment. It really works for my kid."
Yeah.
I literally drove 5 minutes away to the public school, an elementary school, young couples walking out. I said, "How do you like the school?" And the couple says, the young mother says, "Oh, we love the school. My kid was over at that charter school. It's a little too fluid over there." And so I brought him back over here, and they have some nice structure. I really like this public school. And that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Is both of them are probably really good schools, but the parents, knowing their children, get to make that decision, what system works best for what learning environment works best for their child.
Yeah. And that's just a good reminder. We talked earlier about the attitude of gratitude.
Mm-hmm.
We live in an amazing country, and I'm just so thankful for people like you and other people here in Manatee County protecting education and protecting our children. So thank you for that, and thank God for this great country and for the things that He's doing. What do you think just real quick, what do you think will be the impact? Because before HB1 went into
Mhm.
effect, everybody was saying this is going to destroy government schools
Mhm.
slash public schools. Um, have you seen that happen yet, or do you think it will happen?
I haven't seen it happen yet. I know there are some other states around the country that have implemented similar programs. Arizona comes to mind, and it did not devastate their public school system in Arizona. I've kind of thought through this. I mean, if you're happy with your local public school and your child rides their bike to school every morning, and most of the kids in the neighborhood go to that school, and you feel like, hey, the school upholds my values and it's safe and they seem to be learning how to read and write, why would you necessarily, get up and drive your kid to 15 miles away to some other type of school if it's working for you? And I think I've talked to many, many parents. As a matter of fact, I have yet to walk out of a public school, and I've talked to hundreds of parents, and I ask them, "What do you think of the school?" And inevitably, they say they love it. So if they love it,
Yeah,
why would they leave?
yeah,
I just don't see. As long as the public schools are meeting the educational needs, supporting what you might call community values, and it's accessible, convenient, and easy for the kids to get to, I just don't see a mass exodus happening out of the schools.
yeah. And
So
I think that's good, and it puts to rest the fear mongering that took place,
that's right.
which would honestly just trying to protect unions and trying to protect systems
Hmm.
versus trying to fund students instead of funding systems. I think Governor DeSantis had said that, and I think it's maybe it wasn't Governor DeSantis. I don't know who said it, but it's very accurate. Uh, we should be funding students
Hmm.
and not systems. And
Right.
my guess is what's going to happen is that slowly over time, more accountability is going to come into play. Education is going to get better, and students are going to have more, or parents are going to have more and more control the way they should. So I'm excited about HB1. Obviously, it helps us here.
Hmm.
And what is it, about $8,000
Approximately that,
per
yeah.
student? So that can be a student, a parent can decide where they want to go and what school they want to that meets their needs. I mean, free market. It's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's a free country. Still,
I think
still.
the only good monopoly is the military. I don't think we'd want to have competing militaries, but other than that, I think a monopolistic education system is definitely not a way to go. And I'll even go back to the Jefferson's quote. Uh, I wrote a book about the founding fathers, and in there he says, if anybody thinks that education should be run by anyone other than the parents in the community and the local ward, experience will show them to be wrong. So even the state education system, I mean, the Florida Constitution does say that the state of Florida will provide a free, safe, and public education system. So it's a constitutional requirement.
Yeah,
But charter schools are public schools too.
yeah,
So uh, so there has to be this bureaucracy, and it has to be there. But the less that we can centralize it in Florida and bring control back to those local wards and local parents is, for instance, there are things called conversion charter schools. A community can actually get together and say, I'd like to take my traditional public school and turn it into a local charter school, convert it to a local charter school, which then means that they have their own board and they get a little more curriculum flexibility, and it's just they have more freedom to kind of in that community provide the education they like to give their kids there. I think that's a great opportunity,
yeah.
and it's still a public education system.
And we had talked about some of the bureaucracies
Hmm.
that can be eliminated that don't benefit anybody. You care to mention those examples? You talked about the elementary schools, if you remember.
Yeah, I guess the overall point that I wanted to make there was just that decentralizing as much as possible provides more freedom and liberty. So for every, if we have charter schools, that means that a certain amount of families and children in the community now have another choice, and that the local community and the local, there's like a little mini school board that is the board of that school, gets to decide on their curriculum, gets to maybe have unique educational opportunities that a whole big traditional school system couldn't put in place. There doesn't need, the local public school system supervises them financially, and then we have some other minor supervisory functions, but they pretty much run their own show. And so the more that we can decentralize the operation of this big bureaucratic school system in the state of Florida, it provides more liberty and more school choice and more freedom for parents and children. And I just believe overall that's how we want to run our society, decentralized, as much as we can and not have big state government bureaucracies managing our lives, and education is certainly a big part of families' lives in Florida.
Yeah. Well, I'm running for a federal office, so
Mm-hmm.
what are your thoughts on federal control
Yeah.
over
So
education?
please shut down the Department of Education. It's completely unconstitutional. There's no authority for it in the United States Constitution. In the book I wrote about the founding fathers, I did some research on it. This was back in 2014, but the numbers have stayed the same. Over 5,000 employees, about $70 billion budget. $70 billion budget, something that's not constitutional. Everything from student loans to tying, all this federal money that flows, all these school systems, it's just doled out. Sometimes it comes with rules and regulations. Like, for instance, I can think of one federal program basically for children that have exceptional, needs, and that's
Mhm.
fine. But along with that comes the rules that says, well, if someone is hired with this money, you can only help children within the school system that have exceptional needs. So if there's another family or child that's struggling with a problem, behavior problem, if they're not designated as an ESE student, exceptional student, then that position really can't help that family. I look at that and I just think that's why we don't want the federal bureaucracy doing all this kind of stuff. If we had that local control, we would be able to say, yeah, fine, that counselor, that teacher can certainly work with this other family because family needs help. There's not some bureaucratic rule about, well, they're not inside the exceptional student education program, and so Mary can only work with those kids and can't help Bobby, but that's the kind of stuff all that needs to go away. And one more thing that you would need to work on is this thing called the ID law. It's a federal education law. I don't know what the acronym stands for. I used to know it. But basically, it was written back in the early 70s, if I remember correctly, and it talks about things like how many days you can suspend children based on their behavior, if their behavior is tied to their disability, and it just creates havoc in the public school system. It's just this big federal law that, again, we don't have local control to be able to adequately manage the school system for our needs locally. For instance, it says you can only suspend a kid 10 days, I believe, like a 180-day school year.
Yeah.
Well, once the child acts up and they've met their 10-day limit, then what? Well, is it based on their disability? Is it not based on their disability? It ties the hands of our administrators to have effective discipline to keep schools safe. That one needs to be modified too. We can talk about that. I have some ideas on that. So.
Well, I'd love to hear more about it, but just in a nutshell, yes, absolutely. There's no need for the Department of Education. It should be defunded. It should be eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
And we need somebody up in Washington, D.C. with the courage to say so, to speak it out, and to follow through with it. It's not just a talking point on a campaign trail.
Right.
And it's this entire mindset of there should be a law for that. Well, now you have politicians in Washington, D.C. pretending like they're doing good when they're pulling authority away from the local level. That's where the authority needs to be. That's where the decision making needs to be. We need boots on the ground. We need people who understand the situation on the ground, not up in Washington, D.C. I know we're preaching to the choir here.
Can I make a quick comment there?
Yeah, absolutely.
From the Declaration of Independence, let's remember that right after the whole life of liberty and pursuit of happiness words, it says governments are secured among men to secure their rights, not to do good things for people. And that's why I notice a lot of politicians get in that idea mode, like, well, that's a really good idea. Let's go ahead and set up a federal program and pass a law, and we could set up a Department of Education. And what we could do is we could we could give out grants and we could fund all these programs around the country. Man, that's a heck of an idea. Let's do that. No, because the bad that comes out of that, another big, huge bureaucracy, tens of thousands of employees, billions of dollars of money farmed out with rules attached to them according to which political party is in office and who gets appointed to the Department of Education. It's just an all-around bad idea, but it might be a good idea, but no, it's unconstitutional. Don't do it.
Yeah, it's a good thought.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a bad idea to presume that the government is the solution to our problems.
That's right.
It's not the solution to our problems. We can solve we the people, a government of the people, by the people, and for the people. And that should be the government, and that should be held in check but the actual issues and problems that get solved educationally and otherwise need to be, the government needs to get out of the way, not step into the way. Yeah, so you can count on me in that regard, and I'd love to talk to you more about that as well. One other topic before I let you go. Separation of church and state, especially because that's a big topic. When I was at New College of Florida and I just said, hey, we need to start the meetings with prayer, the trustee meetings. Oh my goodness. You would have thought that, I just declared World War III on the entire liberal nation, and perhaps I did, but it is legal, and we did win that battle, and we do have prayer there at New College of Florida before every trustee meeting. But it stoked a conversation of the separation of church and state. And even when I went up to the Senate and had my hearing there, that was a topic as well. But I'd love to get your thoughts on separation of church and state, how it started, and how's it going so far?
Sure. So let's remember what the First Amendment says. Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or the free exercise thereof. And we as a society seem to have forgotten the free exercise thereof. Again, in the research I did for the book I wrote on the Founding Fathers, I mean, they used to have chapel in the Capitol, and Jefferson would go over there and pray and go to church in the Capitol. And the idea, I think, if the Founding Fathers, I feel confident because I've read hundreds of their documents, if not thousands of them, letters they wrote to each other, that you couldn't start a public meeting by asking for prayer would just be completely foreign to them. They set up chaplains right after the Constitution was put in place to, open Congress with prayer. Now, I will, to be intellectually honest, actually Benjamin Franklin during the Constitutional Convention suggested that they kind of hire a chaplain to do some prayers. And the majority, apparently, of the people at the Constitution decided they didn't want to do that. There might have been some financial issues going on there, like we don't really have the money to do that. But he suggested it. And again, whether they did it or didn't do it at the Constitutional Convention, the free exercise thereof, praying at, before a meeting to ask for God's blessing upon this, government meeting that we're having today, so that we have wisdom and courage and discernment to make good decisions for the community. I just don't see how that doesn't fall under the free exercise thereof.
Yeah.
It just is.
I agree. I would take it a step further, even. And in many ways, anti-racism has become the new racism, right? And in many ways, the anti-religion has become the new religion. So by pushing so hard against religion in any ways, and anybody sharing any kind of belief in the purpose of why we're here, and our purpose in even being, and if there is a God and who is God, can't even have those discussions at all. What we've done is we backed into a religion of secularism, which is a religion of wokeness. And in all reality, what's happening right now, these people are pushing with religious fervor these ideas of wokeness, including this racial consciousness. And if we want to tie this all the way back in, John, I'm not sure if you know much about liberation theology, but Black liberation theology, which is the spiritual component of CRT, basically. If you want to still tell your friends that you're a Christian and believe in CRT, well, then you're going to find your answer in liberation theology. But regardless, I don't want to go too far because that'll be another podcast altogether that I'd enjoy getting into. But I think what we've done is we backed into a religion of secularism. And anything that's spoken against secularism, that there might be a God, that's met with religious fervor and nails and teeth, So, yeah, I think we've taken the separation of church and state to a level that our founding fathers never intended.
I would agree with you on that.
All right. Anything else you'd like to say?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here today. I would encourage people, especially if you would like a spiritual component to your child's education. I spent some time here with you today and learned a little bit about your school, and there's a good environment here. There's a good ambiance here. The people are dedicated, and there is a spiritual component to your education here, uh, as well as an athletic component. I believe
Yeah.
you do a lot of tennis coaching and baseball coaching and some other sports. So,
Yeah.
if people are looking for another educational opportunity, they might check it out. And I just appreciate the time that we
Yeah.
had together today to talk about education, which is the future, of our country.
Yeah.
So,
Awesome. Well, thank you, Richard.
thank you.
Really enjoyed it.
Good talking to
Okay.
you.
Good talking to you too. Just got done with that great interview with Richard Tatem. I just really enjoyed getting to know him and becoming friends with him. He is an honest man and comes about his positions honestly, and I can trust that. Even if I might not agree with him on every issue that he votes on, I know that he is a strong guardian and protector of our children that I have confidence in here in Manatee County, and I'm thankful for people like Richard Tatem.